I will start the session. Welcome everyone. My name is Nipin, and I will say no more. I think it's only fair that if I don't give you a chance to introduce yourself, then I should also do the same. Um, I'm going to share how to do an incident investigation. Well, you can call it an incident investigation, but we could use this method for many, many things, including having a conversation with your children, which is where I find it most helpful, actually. Um, so I'm going to share the screen with you now, and I will take you step by step about how to do an investigation using our language as the basis. Why language is so important, and listening to the words is so important if we wanted to investigate an accident or we want to have a conversation with someone. And once you become sensitive to language, which is not easy, which takes time and practice, you see how much more you can learn. And there's a whole lot behind it, which I do not want to say now, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Once again, I would really appreciate if you could turn on your cameras if it's possible for you, because through interaction, we learn so much more by seeing each other. So here's my, I'm assuming a lot of you are will be seeing this from this for the first time. So I have to start from the scratch, making sure that nobody feels left behind in this session. So, okay. All right. So this is the social psychology of risk, which is a very simple idea that how do people make decisions as social beings. You can be absolutely sure that a presence of one more person in your space will influence the way you make decision or the context in which you are placed. The social context makes a huge difference to how we make decisions. So that's what social psychology of risk is about. It's actually a lot more than that, but very simple. How human beings make decisions as social beings, right? So straight to the language. When we speak in three kinds of words or metaphors. We speak in a physical language, which is all about things that we can observe and sense. We speak in a psychological language, which is all about our emotions and feelings. And then we speak in a cultural language also, which is all about how we relate with each other. So for example, I'm sitting in this room and I'm looking at you. You are on a screen. Some of you have turned on your cameras. Some of you have not turned on your cameras. Some of you have some nice background. Some have a blurred background, which I cannot make any sense of. Some of you, sorry, some of you are walking and some of you are still sitting down. So just watch my words. My point is that I'm giving you a physical description of your situation right now, just a physical description. So I'm not involving anything psychological or cultural here, which is the headspace, the group space. I would appreciate if you could please go mute on your phones or your desktops. It will just make it a little easier for me. Those are the physical words that I'm using. Then there are words which people use that can tell us something about their state of mind, their emotions, their feelings. So for example, if I'm looking at you, some of you are probably a little relaxed. Some of you are looking stressed. Some are curious. Some are just trying to find their way, still a little confused where this is all going. So what I'm saying is that I'm now talking the language of the headspace, which can tell us something about the state of mind of an individual or a group of people. So these are words like people feel confused, they are positive, they are negative, they feel uplifted. And these words tell us something about what's going on in the individual in mind. Yeah. And then we have words in the group space that can tell us something about how we relate with each other. So some of you might feel very happy to see people online. Some of you might have other people in the background that you need to watch for. Some of you have to not talk too loud because other people can hear and they get disturbed. So now we are talking about how each one of us relates with the social environment. And these are metaphors or words that we use in what we call the group space. So here are some examples of words in workspace, headspace, and group space. These are, so the first one is the workspace, very, very physical words that we and our industry, particularly if you work in the risk and safety industry, I don't know where you work, but we are full of these words. We love using these words for a very simple reason, that these words give us a sense of control. We can name certain things, we can manage them. We can name certain things, we can measure them. So in a way, we are very, we love these words because they help us to name the problems, and then we can go to sleep well, right? We then come to this, by the way, this is just some examples. This is not a catalog of all the words that we just some examples. Then there are words in the headspace that people speak. These words can tell us something about the state of mind of people, as I explained to you before. So words like somebody's feeling satisfied, encouraged, confused, feels accepted, feels insecure or secure, positive, creative. These are all expressions of a state of mind. And finally, we come to the words in the group space. And these words can tell us something about identity, belonging, how people relate with each other, they trust each other, departments, hierarchies in the organization, how people behave. For example, sometimes we even say us and them. You know, we are doing this, but these guys don't listen. Look how we are using words and we are relating with each other. We are unconsciously, and the word here is unconsciously, because all language that we use is unconscious. We are not even aware that we are speaking these words. I mean, I did not come with a script as I'm speaking to you right now. So all that I'm saying, all language is basically, we are unaware of the words that we are speaking. So what we then do is we use these words and we use a whiteboard to map a story by using these words. And it looks something like this as an example. The whiteboard is one person is mapping a story on a whiteboard, and you can see at the top of this whiteboard, there are all the words in the workspace, the physical words. It has 4 quadrants. The top 2 quadrants is all filled with words in the physical space, which we call the workspace. The bottom left quadrant is all the words in the headspace, which is the psychological words, can tell us something about the state of mind of people. And then we come to words in the group space that can tell us something about the social relationships of people, right? So these are 4 quadrants, no different from what you see at the back of my, where I'm sitting here. This is a whiteboard and it looks exactly like that. Yeah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to map an incident for you now. I'm going to show you how to map an incident. But before I did that, I will show you the 5 steps I will be demonstrating to you on the whiteboard. So what are those 5 steps? Number 1, the first step is we listen and put the words in the right quadrants. As people are speaking, we put the words in the right quadrant. So why do we have 2 quadrants at the top and not 1? Because 1 goes in the positive and 1 goes in the negative. So in risk and safety, we have lots of words like people getting injured, non-compliances, deviations, defects, downtime. So we put all the negative words in the right hand side and all the positive words in the left hand side. And that's why we have 2 quadrants and not 1 at the top. So the first thing we do as people speak, they share a story with us, is that we start to put their words in the right quadrants. So we listen to the story, and as people are speaking, we start putting their words. The second thing is we connect between those words. So if it's a story, words should connect with each other. Sometimes during the story, some connections might come up after you have finished mapping it, which makes it very non-linear, which is very, very different from all the linear models that we use. And it gives us a lot of freedom to write the story. The third step is where we put some sort of analysis to this story. And I will show you how that works. So as you're listening to the story as you're listening to concepts being connected, you can say, I think this is what this is about, or I think this is what that is about. This is called coding. And coding is a very common thing we do in qualitative analysis, for example. But this is much more freedom. The fourth step is an interesting one, which is that when you're having a conversation with someone, what did they tell you that you did not ask for? That's a very, very important thing in learning, because all learning is an act of discovery. That what did I discover in this conversation that I wasn't aware of before I started, or that I wasn't expecting? And lots of times, what happens in a conversation is that people give us words that are total surprise to us. If you can just do that one thing when you hear somebody using words that surprise you, if you can just say, can you tell me a little bit more about that word? You will see the magic of learning. Something new will come out from that story that will totally surprise you, which is what makes learning a very, very, um, um, it's an exercise full of discovery, that nothing is certain in learning. And when you ask an open question and when you follow people's words, when you open up their words, you will find something else sitting there, which is the real joy and real value of learning. That you found something that you were not expecting. And that doesn't happen when we ask leading questions, because leading questions by its very nature is just testing a hypothesis. Do you see this? Did you follow the process? Did you not do that? We are basically testing hypothesis and we are learning nothing. Nothing new comes out. But when you open up words, there is a lot of discovery there. And the fifth one is we can also identify on the whiteboard where is the trade-off, where people are confused between going one way or the other. And that's another very important point in learning. Can we identify trade-offs, doubts, confusions, workarounds, and so on, where people get stuck? This exercise can be used for both accident investigations as well as risk assessments, which is looking back and looking forward. But in this session, I will only focus on the looking ahead or looking back, which is the accident investigations. Right. So, which is a very, very quick introduction. Obviously, if you go on my website, and you go on my YouTube channel, it's called Embracing Differences. You have all the videos and playlists that I'm going to show you now on accident investigations. But my job right now is to just quickly take you through it, take some questions from you, and then leave you with those worked examples. There are plenty of examples if you click on the playlists on accident investigations, risk assessments, many, many things you can use for this application. But for now, we will only stick to one example on incident investigation. So let's go to that. I will take your questions once I've finished with this. Yeah. So here is an actual incident investigation, a real story of a contractor who is carrying out or who was carrying out some welding work on a drilling rig. And he went to the rig, he opened the wrong manhole, which is a kind of a gutter, and it has a cover to it. And he opens the lid and he is exposed to toxic gases. Now, nothing happens to him, he just feels dizzy. But this is the scenario. This is all we were told before we started the investigation, to say, you need to go and check what is happening here. So this was the scenario given to us. And now we will see how we can map this on a whiteboard. So this is exactly the replica of what I showed you on the picture, and what is at the back of my where I'm sitting. Workspace, all the physical words; headspace, all the psychological or the words, and this is the group space, which is all related with social relationships. So we started interviewing people and see what we got from there. So you interview the contractor, and he says that he's carrying out some hot work in a tank, which is welding. He arrives near the tank, he opens the wrong manhole, smells toxic gases, and feels dizzy. So you can see that all the positive words or the neutral words go on the left side, and all the negative words go on the right hand side. Now, don't worry if you don't get it exactly right. That is not important. The important thing is to put as many words as you can, because then people can start to visually see what they are talking. That is your job, to make the verbal visual. You're not supposed to talk. You're not supposed to give your opinion. You just have to map their story. And there could be 3 people sitting there or 10 people sitting there. You just need to use a whiteboard, be a good facilitator, listen and map the story, right? He then says, you keep listening to him. He says that, well, this is standard stuff and no one asked any questions. So now he's telling you something about the culture of this workplace and his own culture. He sees this as standard stuff, right? And no one asks any questions. Now, please don't worry too much if you take standard stuff here. Nothing, the world will not fall apart. This is just, it will take you some time to start putting words in the right quadrant. It takes a lot of practice to listen. But for now, we just see that this is a cultural issue. He sees this as a standard stuff, but there's another cultural issue, which is no one on this rig is asking any open questions. You then interview the safety officer and he says that we did an online induction and we checked his paperwork, which is his certificates and contract and so on. You're listening to the safety officer more and he says, our welder was on leave, so I was very pleased because the job was deferred for 2 months and we needed to get the job done, right? So he's telling you something about his state of mind. He's telling you about the culture of this place and he's telling you the pressure on him, which is also a cultural issue, right? He then makes the same expression. He says, he was very experienced, this guy, the welder, right? Then you interview the ratings, which is the able-bodied seamen on the ones who are doing all the manual labor on the rig. And then you ask them the same question. And they say that he appeared very confident. So here you are, he was very experienced and he appeared very confident. So obviously this person is emitting some kind of energy, which is making everyone believe that he is a kind of an expert, right? And then they say, we were just following the instructions. So all I have done right now is I have just mapped the story on a whiteboard. That's it. You can use a whiteboard. You can use an A4 sheet. You can use an A3 sheet. It gives you the freedom. The most important thing is the ability to listen and map the words, right? And that comes with practice. That takes a little time because we are naturally not good at this space. We are very good in the top 2 quadrants. We are masters in this space in our industry. We are not good at listening to words here in this space. And we are good in these 2 spaces at the top because all we want to do is we just want to solve problems. We want to measure and we want to solve. And most accident investigations go terribly wrong because we are so fixated in this space, in the upper 2 quadrants, and we are not paying attention in the bottom 2 quadrants. And this is where the real cultural problems are. The people problems are and the cultural problems are. And we are not paying sufficient attention there. But what I'm encouraging you to do visually now is to see that we are actually populating the bottom 2 quadrant, which means we are having a more balanced conversation. The story is not biased at just top, but it's also addressing human issues as well as organizational issues. Very, very important. Now that you have a balanced story in front of you, we start to put some kind of analysis to it, which we do in all qualitative analysis, which we do in incident investigations, except that we use drop-down boxes, which tell us nothing. But here we have the freedom to choose our own words based on our own culture, based on our own problems. So we put some sort of a coding to it. And as I'm hearing this little part of the story, I am starting to think that this person is giving me the impression of an expert. Now, this is the job of the facilitator. People who are telling the story will not say this to you. This is the job of the expert who will tell you that. No, the facilitator. Then you come here and you see that what you realize after mapping this story is that this is a non-routine job. This is not a routine job because the welder is on leave and they are trying to bring a contractor to sort out this problem. So this is not a routine job. And what's interesting is it appears in 2 places again that in this culture there is no dissent. People do not like to be questioned. They do not like to be answerable. So we were just following instructions. No one asked any questions. So nobody is really asking questions in this culture. So you have some understanding of the culture and this person at the end of this coding exercise, which takes a little bit of practice again. And the final, one more thing, which is that we talked about discovery. So this is what you call a gift, which is what was given in this conversation that you did not expect. What came out in the language that you were not expecting? A lot of things. For example, he appeared confident. Um, I was very pleased. Um, Standard stuff. No dissent. Non-routine job, no dissent at all, get the job done. And the beauty of all of this, highlighting all of this, is that you can open up just one of these words and say, can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by standard stuff? Or can you tell me a little bit more about what you meant by I was very pleased? And there you have a very, very powerful story waiting to be told. And this is the power of the gift, that people are throwing gifts at us. They're throwing words at us, but we are not listening. And you know why we are not listening? Because we are so fixated to solve the problems. So you shift your attention downwards. You look at all these beautiful metaphors or words that people are giving you. Choose one or two, it doesn't matter. And so much more will come out because it's their words, not yours. All you need to do is just say, can you tell me what you mean when you say standard stuff or get the job done, right? So that's the fourth step. And the final step is this: where are the trade-offs? Where are people becoming stuck in conflicts? Because a trade-off means you have to make a decision, but it's not straightforward. It could be one or the other, and you need to choose between the two or three or four. So in every decision, there's a trade-off. You could have come to this session today, or you could have stayed and done something else, but you chose to come here. So there was a trade-off. You traded off coming here rather than doing what you had to do. So we all trading off. So in accident investigations, we need to find out where people are confused, where they have to make trade-offs, where they are in conflicts in their decisions. So a trade-off is always denoted or symbolized by a line with arrows in two or more directions, which means that we are being pulled apart in our decisions. So in this case, for example, what you find in this visual mapping is that there was an online induction carried out for a non-routine job, which is probably not the best way to address the risk. That is the first time this person is coming to your rig and you have only done an online induction. Or there's another one, which is that you're torn between deferring the job and getting the job done. So my point is, and there could be many, many more, when you have 3 or 5 people watching you as you are laying it down, you will see more and more things coming out. And a good facilitator should be able to spot these things, should be able to spot the trade-offs. And that's where you come to understand the power of decision making. So it's a visual, verbal method that gives you lots and lots of innovative thinking, freedom to map, to understand decision making. Can be used for accident investigations, but can be used for many, many other things. But this is a very simple example. I've done aviation, maritime, health, insurance, so many investigations using this method. I've written a book which has one chapter dedicated to this method. And I've shown you, there is a YouTube channel where you can watch all this. But one has to learn to become sensitive to language. That's the key to becoming intelligent in this space. You have to listen metaphorically. And I think that's it from my end. I will stop here and I will take questions from all of you. How are you doing time-wise? Where we have time. We have lots of time. So yes, questions, please. And please, if you can, turn on your cameras.
Hey, Nippon, there are a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if you've seen them or you can see them on for what you're using. But Amy asked, do you have any examples of best practices of anyone doing the whiteboarding in a digital space successfully with the tool?
I actually wouldn't even recommend doing digital mapping. You know why? Because this is a very dynamic exercise. You have to start you actually have to do it on a whiteboard. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing a digital whiteboard, but you should be able to use the stylus and the usual just a replica of a whiteboard. It shouldn't be what I showed you just now, the layered software. That is only if you have to present it somewhere, you should use that. But for the purpose of practicing and getting better at mapping, you should always use the real whiteboard. Yes.
And I think maybe she asked for recommendations for a good tool to whiteboard digitally. With IQ, I have whiteboarded on Microsoft Teams before. They have a whiteboard function, and you can actually set up a boilerplate that you can map off of that, and then you're just writing in there. And one of the things that I worked with when doing that, when trying to introduce this kind of thinking to people, in an investigation that had to be done virtually, was I made sure that there were colors assigned to each person who was inputting, and that made it easier for people to go back and look at it and understand what they were seeing and using. So that's just my answer to Amy's question. But I understand what you're saying. It's very difficult to do without a physical whiteboard.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love the physical suggestion, but like oftentimes the environment we do at the teams are remote. They're in 7 states, right? So there are some challenges, but I actually kind of like the way Nippon has it set up in the room, right? Maybe it's a physical thing that you could do and then show it.
Here it is, Amy. Here's
Oh, there you
people.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you can do it. There's nothing stopping you from doing it, but you really need something good quality, and I think you get a lot of that these days. If that's what you mean, yes.
Hi, Nippon, Deirdre, Ireland
Hi, Drew.
calling.
Yes.
Yeah, do you get much debate on which quadrant it's going to go into depending on the facilitator? So, you know, you could have one facilitator might consider a neutral or in a workspace, and another facilitator could consider it a negative. So do you get much debate about which quadrant, and how much does that affect the overall process?
Amy, sorry, Deirdre, the thing about it's a very good question, by the way. The thing about making the verbal visual is making your biases, is basically surfacing your biases, that you're not afraid of saying, this is how I see it. The problem with traditional accident investigation models is that there is no way we can spot the bias. The only time the bias becomes visible is when a report comes out and we see there was none of this. This is completely misunderstood. So you cannot avoid bias. It's impossible. It's actually a joke to say that you can avoid or remove bias. But what you can do is a very honest accident investigation that makes the verbal visual. And if there are 5 people sitting in the room, it's a very democratic process to come to some kind of a mutual agreement. And I think that's the key to it. Yes, you will always have differences, to answer your question, always. But we are not afraid to make them visible and transparent. It's very ethical, let's say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Nippon, David here. I have a question regarding the 6th step. So you were discussing 5 steps, and it were 6 steps. Was the balanced conversation was the last one?
Yeah,
And there's
David, I think there's too much to cover
Okay.
but to answer your question, there are not 6, there are actually 9 steps. But
Okay.
I did not go into that. The 6th one is emotions. That sometimes this is it, that if some people, when you go into an organization and you ask questions and they are being excessively positive in all their responses, and you can hear it, you can almost certainly say that they're hiding something from you. There are also instances where people are so subdued and so tense and so stressed that the board is full of negative emotions. And that also tells you that people are under a lot of stress in this place. So what we do is we put, as we listen, you can name the emotion, it's positive or negative or neutral. And when you start to map it, you can see that the board is balanced, too positive or too negative.
Mhm.
With mental health problems, for example, when you listen to people, the board is full of negativity, full of negative emotions. But now you can visualize it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Nipin, Dhruvya,
Hi, Dhruv.
a couple of takeaways from what you just spoke to us about. One is that the investigator should be a very good listener. As you correctly spotted, that most of the time we are interested in solving the issue, or we already have in our mind, well, this is what has happened, and now we want to prove that hypothesis.
Correct.
Now, the interesting part which you mentioned was, and a question for you is, how much do you expect the investigator to be listening, and the person who's being investigated, how much time do you give him to tell his story? Ideally, we should give him a good amount of time. But in the real world, that becomes a challenge. Okay? So your thoughts about it.
Okay, your question is, Dhruv, I actually wouldn't want to utter a word if the person being investigated wants to talk. Um, I have nothing to say. If I'm getting a flow and you can feel the conversation as it goes, um, and we have this tendency that stick to the agenda. It doesn't work like that because a lot of learning comes from very unexpected places. So I'll give you an example that might uh, probably shock some people here, but let's do it anyway. Um, I did an investigation some time ago uh, where it's a podcast I did also, where I asked the person and look at the question. I said, "What would you like to share?" And his first response was he took me to his ambition. He was a seafarer. He had an accident at sea. He didn't talk any of that. What he said was that I always wanted to be a lawyer until a certain age in my life, and I at one point I saw my father's mobile phone, and he was having an affair with a mistress, and he said I was totally shocked in that time. Um, and I just kept listening. And he kept on for about good 15 to 20 minutes talking about that particular instance in his life that has nothing to do with the accident investigation, perhaps. After 15 minutes, once you take that out, he starts to talk about the actual incident. And then once you take that lid off, once you take that his worry and his stress out, and you build that trust with that person, the story comes out without interruption. Now, I'm not saying that will happen all the time, but I think it's very, very important that we keep our agenda on the one side when we investigate people. And we get very frustrated because we think don't have time and we are working against the time pressure. I don't know about the analysis and the writing report part. I'm sure that there is an enormous amount of pressure there. But if I have 2 hours and somebody wants to talk about other stuff which has nothing to do with the accident investigation, most of the time I'm very happy with that because I know at one stage it will come and it will be so powerful that I won't be able to handle it. And it happens all the time.
So basically what you're saying, we need to build the trust, create an environment where people feel comfortable to talk. And then
Yes,
we move ahead.
absolutely. And this is why becoming sensitive to language and mirroring words, like I give you the example of the gift. If you mirror words, there is nothing more powerful than just mirroring words, just repeating the metaphors. And it creates immense bonding and trust as soon as you start the conversation. If you listen to the previous session, which I will share with all of you later on, there are also questions that you might want to ask, very open questions like, What would you like to share? Where would you like to begin? Think about these questions. Where would you like to begin? I mean, the problem may be work related. The problem may be related to his relationship or her relationship with a supervisor. The problem might be that a piece of machinery was installed 20 years ago. And that is the problem of this. That is what has caused this accident. So, who am I to start with the leading question? So, the more open we are with the questioning, the more we are open with discovery. And true learning is all about discovery. It's all about coming to a place which we had no clue about, which we never imagined. And that's good learning.
Okay, that's good.
Quick question. How do you recommend we balance the time required for a thorough investigation with the client's expected time?
Sorry, can you balance what? Sorry?
How do you recommend we balance the time required, for a thorough investigation with the client's expected timeline?
That is left to the professional judgment of the investigator. I made myself very clear, Dennis, actually, that I would focus most of my time in building trust. That's where I will focus, Dennis. Yes. Most of the times, if the story flows, you have very good quality information that you can rely upon. It's no good. And what I see typically is that people utter a couple of sentences and we start to interrupt. We cannot handle silence. We cannot handle things that we were not expecting. And we become so annoyed. And even before you say anything, your vibes already make that person uncomfortable. And the rest of the conversation is just a waste of time if we are thinking about being time efficient. Yeah.
So Devin, sorry, who said that?
No, go ahead, Grant. No problem.
So I was looking at what you asked and about making that safe space and Devin, how do you most people when they're being questioned in an interview, they're almost reticent to even listen to themselves, much less listen to a leading question. So when getting that, how do you get that reticence to listen to themselves out of the way so that they can feel safe inside themselves, not in the room, but first inside themselves, to actually have that to tell you whatever they want to talk about? I like the idea that and I've heard it before where you talked about the young man wanting to be a lawyer, but he didn't, and why. And he went into all that before you even started talking about the incident. And ever since I heard that in 2019, I've had several incidents where I've been interviewing somebody for whatever, and the same thing has happened. We start talking about something that has local food, local traffic patterns. It can be just about anything that we're talking about that's on their mind, but it gets them to listening to themselves first, which is where they begin to actually understand, why they're there, why they're sitting in a chair talking. So what are some of the ways that you might help break down that reticence and invite them to just talk without worrying about what's going to come from it?
Your question is that how do you get people to talk without worrying too much?
Yeah, about what's going to come from it, about what the consequences might be. A lot of people are internal and they don't want to talk. They don't want to answer that questions because they don't know what the consequences may be down the road. And there's, to them, there's always consequences. But when they're just allowed to talk and there's no answering questions, right? There's just talking about a situation. How do we get them into a spot to where they're comfortable talking about that? Not just talking about it, but comfortable listening to themselves talk about it. I mean, that's the hard part, right? Getting them to listen to their internal dialogue.
Grant, I don't think, I mean, maybe we can disagree, of course, but there is no such thing like listening to yourself unless, of course, you are meditating. That's a different issue. And you can do that. Of course, you can do that. I do that all the time. But all listening is relational. The act of listening and speaking is relational. You will only speak when there is someone to listen to. And then you will only listen when you keep your agenda on the one side. It goes both ways. Relationship is key for people to feel listened. And it's a very simple thing, but if you look at a lot of literature, it is missing this one aspect of the relational beings. We are relational beings. You can think of all the people who have brought you to where you are in your career today. Anyone. They took the time to connect with you. All teaching, we have a big problem in this country today that teaching in schools is all about telling. And you can think of all the teachers who you admire today. They gave you the space to express yourself. You cannot learn without building a relationship with people. Accident investigations. I wrote a book on accident investigations. Nobody wants to listen to Captain Francisco Schettino on the Costa Concordia because he's an idiot. Once you destroy someone's character, you cannot listen to them. Once you objectify someone, you cannot listen to them. Once you call somebody an Italian, a Chinese, an Indian, a British, whatever, once you put people into boxes, you cannot listen to them. All listening happens in relationships by acknowledging the presence of the other person. It's a very simple thing, but that is where all the magic happens.
Thank you. That actually answered my question.
It's a very, very, very important thing. You look at the children when they come back from school and you just ask them, how was the day? And they will tell you. The best teachers in the world know that teaching is relational, learning is relational. It's all relational. We don't get it. People want to dominate. They want to be proven right. They want to look at the question, why did you not follow the process? I mean, come on. How on earth will that person talk? You put him on the spot. People don't talk like that. There are 250 muscles on my face that are moving as I'm asking questions. Without even asking the question, I can tell you this person is not interested in listening. He just wants to prove himself right. Or she just wants to prove herself right behind the process. According to process number so and so, why didn't you follow it? I've lost you completely. I'm not with you anymore now. And this is why we talked about it last time, but look at the ethics of these questions, Grant. I mean, just have a look. Sorry, yeah, here. This is all the questions that you would ask, and common to all of these questions is, I'm here to build a relationship with you. You are more important than me. The interviewer, the investigator is not important. You are important. It's about you. I want to learn from you. And this is all the ethics of listening. I'm very happy to send these to you. You can point your phone on this. You can download these. And this points to the YouTube channel where I've created videos, several examples of what I'm saying. We preach it, we practice it, we see the results of this. It's the hardest thing to do, but that's where the real value of an incident investigation lies. You're not important. The important one is the one being investigated. All learning is relational.
Well said, Nipin. Just extending this conversation, do you believe in the concept of a probable cause, or coming up with the contributory factors and let the organization decide to address all those contributory factors rather than an individual? What do you think?
I'll answer this question differently, Dhruv. I generally I'm not very good at setting myself into a binary trap. So what I would suggest is this, that I think most of the times the answers are very obvious. An incident investigation or learning first has to deal with the politics and ethics of it. That's the first thing. That if you get past this question that who has the power and who's made powerless in this narrative that I'm creating, you already have an answer.
Understood.
Yes. So you can call it, we can dress it up in as many words as we like, but if the incident narrative is silent on the perspective of the one being implicated, it has nothing to do with learning. It is all about exercising power and control. Now, there are instances where something big happens like Costa Concordia and we can't help it. But in everyday work, in everyday events, in little near misses, if all you see is control, 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 we are not learning anything at all. So you can call it probable cause, or you can call it contributory factor. If it all lends into situational awareness or loss of situational awareness or lack of or complacency or not following the process, it hardly matters. So one only has to read through the outcome of an accident investigation report and speak to people involved to say, was I being listened to? There you have the answer.
Understood. Basically, the way I see it is that it definitely requires a lot of effort on part of the investigator to start re-looking at things the way an individual has been trained to become an investigator.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
start. So this is a different aspect of it. And actually, to be very honest, I like it. We are bringing the human element to understand a person and then having open questions to address it.
Dhruv, this is the accident investigation model that we use in all our courses and everyone. The first place to begin an accident investigation is to educate the investigator, because it is only through the eyes of the investigator or auditor or the site visitor that we are actually looking at the event. And the first thing in that is the investigator's bias at the top. If we do not address these areas, we will never be able to understand what happened. All we will know is a biased and unethical, a political view of one person. And and you can tell me one accident investigation course that actually addresses or starts with addressing the bias of the investigator. There isn't one. I am not aware of one. Everything filters down through this person or this group of people. And we are so silent on this. You probably, if you read the second chapter of my book, it's called The Ritual of Accident Investigations. I put it on LinkedIn as well. It is a fascinating thing to watch that an accident investigation team enters on a toppled ship and they collect black box data and they preserve it in some kind of a packet. It's such a scenic thing to watch. They extract that data, they come back, they write a report, and it's nothing but a biased view of the accident investigator. How interesting. And this goes back to what Deirdre was saying earlier. It doesn't matter that, whether, what was it, Deirdre, you said that the when somebody is doing an investigation, how do you make sure that their biases are dealt with? I think the most important thing is to make these things transparent. And this is why a visual method. I would always begin with ethics and politics.
So in the documents which you're going to share with us, whatever it is, do you have any examples which we can try to solve or work upon and then compare it with your notes?
The last chapter of my book, Dhruv, gives a very, very clear comparison between the traditional accident investigation and the one that is done with keeping the investigator's bias in the mind. It's right there, and there are videos that
Okay,
I've done. You
great.
can watch them. There's lots of stuff out
Okay,
there. Yeah,
great.
it's very,
Thanks.
in a tabular form. I have made it very explicit. This is the traditional way, and this is the way you do it using this method.
Okay, thanks. Nipin, there's a question for you in the chat.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not watching the chat. I'd rather interact. What is it? Still looking for causes of seeking.
Something with a HOP.
Yeah, it's human and organizational performance. I'm not.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I was watching. That was guilty as charged.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Emily and Grant were in a chat, and I didn't know what HOP stood for. So, okay, thank you.
Any, is it making sense?
Nipin, this is Arpudaraj.
Go
Hi,
for it.
Nipin. This is Arpudaraj. Yeah. I was just about to talk about control, relation of control in a investigation report. So, and then you are talking about how much we try to control, and just thought that as a thought, just wrote down a couple of control, the kind of control that we try to have on investigation reports. It all started, I mean, when I started thinking about it, it started from even the format that we want to have the investigation report on. The control starts from kind of the very basics. Almost all organizations have a format which says that, okay, you have to start in this format, and we eventually want it in this format. And we start controlling the investigation from that part, and it goes into what model of investigation the investigator has to use. It's not, most of the time, it's all being, there's a process, and there is a system which says that what has to be done. The investigator is is not letting himself free out of it. The investigator is most of the time trying to be within that space, because that is what is expected out of him. That is
Yes.
what the industry is expecting out of him.
Yeah. Arpudaraj, the what I've demonstrated on the using this visual method does not take away any of what you are doing. It is used as a way to engage with people. Once you start to understand the story, in fact, what you can do is you can just take a picture of this conversation on the whiteboard and complement it with your process. The process does not go away. You can use any process as you want. This is meant for two things. One is to enrich the conversation, and two is for the investigators to become a little bit more self-aware, which is actually the main thing. Yeah. So you're not taking away any process. This is to create that engagement and make people a little bit less sure about themselves.
Yeah, but I think sometimes we take the process too much to the word, that it becomes too stiff, and that is where I sometimes find that in my experience that the investigation is stuck around that.
Correct.
That they tend to stick too much to the process, and then the investigators struggle to free themselves out of it. Like,
Of
for
course.
example, we go and talk to a person, and we tell that we should go without an agenda, but then most of the time the person who steps in, he always has something in his mind, and he just wants to find out the only that. He's not looking at finding out more than that. So
course.
that happens. Once he gets the answer for that question, he closes it.
That's why, and this is why learning is a very different thing. That's why I was paying so much emphasis on discovery. That what have you learned about yourself or about the case that you didn't know before you started the investigation? And most of the times, nothing. Yeah. There's another question. How do you investigate an incident where at least one of the main people is now dead as a result of the accident? If you can't talk to the main participant, then how do you get their perspective and listen to them? Well, this is the book that I wrote is called Are We Learning from Accidents? The last chapter is about an accident where there is a fatality. And in fact, there's a lot you can learn from other people around. And one of the things is that the culture of the organization will surface. Doesn't matter who you speak with. If you listen with patience, it will all surface. All you need is a one story actually, and people go for quantity and they want more quantity. You don't need quantity. You need depth and engagement to understand the systemic problems. I've been an auditor and investigator for 6 years. I used to write one non-conformity, no more than that, but I would go so deep into it, all the systemic issues will come out in that one. So you need a good conversation. That's all you need. You don't need the dead person. You actually need one person who's probably never heard. Nobody talks to that person. There's one interesting thing in the maritime world, that when there's an accident, we always go and talk to the captain, Joel. And we shouldn't be talking to the captain. We should be talking to people who are directly affected by it. For example, if something happens on the deck, we should talk to people on the deck. But investigators, because they're either captains or chief engineers, they seek comfort. They go to somebody who they find comfort with, familiar rank, familiar language. And so, it's all about getting trapped into that comfortable mindset, and you learn nothing at all.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. We are coming to the end of it. I can take one more question if someone has a burning one.
And just to add to the question which was asked earlier, what happens in case all the crew are deceased?
Oh, this is aviation world, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Well, there's a lot you can do, Dhruv, by looking at the politics of the narrative. I mean, I can only talk about the Air India accident, which I have no clue about. But just looking at the trajectory of the initial investigation, you can look at the politics and the ethics and how it is driving the conversation. Once you put something down on a piece of paper, there's a lot you can learn, Dhruv. Doesn't matter whether people were alive or not. Al Faro is a classic example of that. Al Faro was a ship that sank in the middle of the ocean, and the investigation body, which is the US Coast Guard, went as far as saying that the captain decided, wow, as if the captain woke up in the morning, he decided to ride into the storm, as if people are suicidal on the day of the accident. It's remarkably, I don't know, I don't even have words. It is so misleading. Once you put a narrative there, there's a lot one can say by mapping the conversation. It is amazing.
Understood.
Yes.
Well said, Nipin. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So just a closing note, if anyone's interested, I don't know how you and where you live and how far you are from my beautiful city where I live, but there are some programs coming up. There's in different parts of the world. I have one coming up in London, which is from the 19th to the 21st of November on accident investigations. And then there's one online from the 1st to the 12th of December, which is 1 hour each. And it covers both time zones, East and West. So if you were interested, this is the website, novellis.solutions/events. And if you wanted to join, you're more than welcome to come along. And that is it from my end. Any questions? Thank you very much for joining. I really enjoyed this interaction.
Thank you, Nipin.
So lively, yes. Doesn't
Thank
happen
you.
very often, yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.